Waitress with sick child received a tip from Ronaldo that changes everything. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. Camila adjusted her apron, took a deep breath, and forced a smile before stepping out onto the restaurant floor. The place was packed, the clinking of glasses, laughter, and overlapping conversations blending into a chaotic yet familiar rhythm. For most servers, a busy night meant better tips. For her, it meant one more chance to earn the money she desperately needed. Her son, Leo, was sick at home. His fever hadn't gone down all day, and although her neighbor Anna was watching him, the guilt ate at her. She wanted to be with him, to hold him, to comfort his cries. But instead, she was here, serving tables to afford the medicine that could save his life. Camila, table 6. Daniel, her coworker, called as he rushed past with a tray of steaming dishes. She nodded quickly, grabbing her notepad and making her way to the table, plastering the best smile she could manage. When she arrived, her heart skipped a beat. A man in a royal blue shirt sat alone, casually flipping through the menu. His face was strikingly familiar. Short, perfectly styled hair, a strong jawline, a relaxed yet confident smile. No, it couldn't be. She shook off the thought. Famous people always had lookalikes. She couldn't afford to be distracted. "Good evening, welcome. What would you like to drink?" she asked, keeping her voice polite and steady. The man looked up and smiled. "Just water, thank you." That voice. She had definitely heard it before. "Of course," she said quickly, jotting it down. "Would you like any recommendations?" The man leaned forward slightly, watching her with an easy curiosity. "What's your favorite dish here?" Camila blinked. She hadn't expected that question. "Well, the Alfredo pasta is really good, and our grilled steak is one of the most popular dishes." "Then I'll take the steak." Camila nodded, scribbling the order. "Excellent choice. I'll get that right out for you." Before she could turn away, he studied her for a moment, his expression softer now. "You look exhausted." Her breath caught for just a second. Customers never noticed, and if they did, they never pointed it out. She forced another smile. "It's just been a long day." He nodded, understanding, but didn't push further. As she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about him. The call that changes everything. When she reached the counter, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Anna. Panic gripped her chest as she glanced at the screen. She quickly picked it up, turning away so no one could see her. "Anna?" Her friend's voice was urgent, frantic. "Camila, Leo's really bad. His fever won't go down, and he's barely breathing properly." The world froze around her. "Did you give him the medicine?" "Yes, but it's not working." "I really think you need to take him to the hospital." Her stomach dropped. She knew what that meant. Another hospital bill. More money she didn't have. She ran a shaky hand over her face, trying to suppress the panic. "Just give me a little more time. I'm trying to get the money together." "Camila, I don't think we can wait much longer." Her vision blurred with unshed tears. "I'll figure something out. I promise." She ended the call just as Arturo, her boss, walked up behind her. The unbearable weight of desperation. "No phones during shift, Camila. You know the rules." She clenched her jaw. "I know, I'm sorry, I just... not interested in excuses. Table 8 is waiting." Move. Her fists tightened at her sides, but she said nothing. She needed this job, no matter how much it crushed her. She shoved her phone into her pocket, forcing herself to keep moving. For the rest of the evening, Camila kept glancing at the man in blue. Maybe it was because he was one of the only polite customers that night. Maybe it was because his presence felt strangely grounding in the middle of her personal storm. Or maybe it was because he was watching her too. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that made her feel seen. When his food arrived, the restaurant had quieted slightly. "You from around here?" he asked as she placed the plate in front of him. She hesitated. Personal questions weren't unusual, but something about his interest felt different. "Yeah. You always work late shifts?" She let out a breathless chuckle. "Lately, yeah." He nodded, then glanced down at his plate. "Smells great. Thanks." She nodded back and turned before the conversation could stretch any further. At the next table, a businessman in a suit snapped his fingers at her impatiently. "You forgot the extra sauce," he said, annoyed. She blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I'll get that right away." He scoffed. "This place is a mess tonight." Something inside her fractured just a little more. But she swallowed it down and kept moving. Across the room, the man in blue looked up from his plate. He had heard the exchange. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened slightly. Camila rushed back to the kitchen, grabbing the sauce, forcing herself to keep going. Every second felt heavier. Then, just as she was turning back to the dining area, her phone buzzed again. Another call. Another wave of panic. She knew it was Anna before she even looked. And somehow she already knew before answering. Things had just gotten worse. Camila's fingers trembled as she answered the call. Anna's voice was urgent, barely above a whisper. "Camila, he's not getting better. He's crying in his sleep. His body is burning up. I really think you need to take him in." Camila's breath hitched, and for a moment she couldn't respond. Her throat tightened as if an invisible hand was squeezing it shut. She wanted to drop everything, to run out of the restaurant and never look back. But she couldn't. She had to finish her shift. She had to earn her pay. Arturo wouldn't care that her child was sick. He would only see an abandoned table and lost money. "I just need one more hour," she whispered. "One more." Anna hesitated. "Okay, but hurry." Camila hung up, stuffing the phone into her apron pocket as though that would make the guilt disappear. She forced herself to step back onto the floor, but this time it felt as if the weight of the world was pressing against her shoulders. She kept her head down, moving between tables, taking orders, refilling drinks, and dodging impatient glances. The customers saw her as nothing more than a service worker, someone who existed to bring them food, to cater to their whims. Her fingers ached from gripping the tray too tightly. Her back throbbed from bending over tables, flashing empty smiles at people who would never think of her again once they walked out the door. But she kept moving, because if she stopped, even for a second, she would crumble. And she couldn't afford to crumble. At table 8, Ronaldo, though she still didn't know it was him, ate slowly, watching her. He had seen exhausted workers before, struggling parents trying to hold their lives together with frayed strings. But something about her was different. She wasn't just tired. She was drowning. Camila brought him his check, her smile small and strained. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice softer this time. She hesitated before nodding. "Yes, just a long night." He didn't believe her. But he didn't press. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. She blinked. "Sir, your total is—" "No," he interrupted gently. "This is for you." She looked at the envelope in confusion. It wasn't a credit card. It wasn't a tip left on the table. It was thick, heavy. "I can't accept." "You can." He slid it across the table toward her. "I insist." For a moment, she just stared at him. There was no arrogance in his face, no sense that he was doing this for show. Just quiet certainty. She swallowed hard, her fingers hesitating before finally picking it up. "Thank you," she murmured, unsure of what else to say. He simply nodded. Then, without another word, he stood, stretched his arms, and left. Just like that. No grand gesture. No expectation of thanks. Gone. Camila stood frozen, the envelope in her hands feeling heavier than it should. She was about to slip it into her pocket when Daniel passed by, nudging her. "Do you even realize who that was?" She frowned. "What?" Daniel laughed, shaking his head. "That was Ronaldo." Her stomach flipped. "What?" "The footballer. The guy worth millions." "You didn't recognize him." Camila stared at the door where he had disappeared, her mind completely blank. No, she hadn't recognized him. She had been too busy surviving to notice. Her fingers tightened around the envelope. Suddenly, her world tilted. Camila stepped into the alley behind a restaurant, away from the noise and the customers, before tearing open the envelope with shaking hands. And then she saw it. Stacks of crisp $100 bills. Her breath hitched. She flipped through them, counting, barely able to process the number. $10,000. Her knees nearly buckled. She gripped the brick wall behind her for support, her breath coming in short, desperate bursts. $10,000. Enough to cover Leo's hospital bill. Enough to buy her more time. Enough to give her hope. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her chest rising and falling unevenly. Her phone buzzed again. Anna. She fumbled with the screen as she answered. Anna. He's really bad, Camila, Anna said quickly. You need to come now. Camila didn't hesitate. I'm on my way. She didn't clock out. She didn't tell Arturo. She just ran. By the time she arrived at the hospital, Leo's little body was burning up, tiny beads of sweat clinging to his forehead. A nurse led them inside, speaking quickly. How long had the fever been this high? Had he been eating? Drinking? Camila answered as best she could, her voice shaking, her hands trembling. The doctor examined him quickly, his eyes flashing with concern. He needs treatment immediately, he said. We'll start him on fluids and monitor him closely. But we'll need to run tests, which meant more bills, which meant more money she didn't have. Except now she did. She reached into her bag, her fingers still trembling, and pulled out the cash. All of it, she said, placing it on the desk. Please, do whatever he needs. The doctor blinked, clearly surprised. Then, slowly, he nodded. And just like that, Leo was taken into care. Camila sat in the waiting room, her body sagging into the chair, finally able to breathe. For the first time in months, she wasn't trapped. For the first time in months, there was a way out. And it was because of a man she hadn't even recognized. Hours passed. Camila dozed off in the chair, exhaustion finally taking over. When she woke, it was to the sound of tiny footsteps. She blinked, disoriented, before realizing Leo was standing in front of her. Not crying, not feverish, just standing, looking better. Mommy. Leo's voice was small, tired, but clear. Camila surged forward, wrapping her arms around him as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You're okay, she whispered. You're okay. Leo just nodded sleepily against her shoulder. Camila pulled back, brushing damp curls from his forehead. Guess what, baby? She murmured, her voice thick with emotion. Someone gave us a miracle today. Leo blinked up at her, half asleep. A magic wand? Camila laughed, choked and broken, but real. Yes, she whispered. A magic wand. Camila sat by Leo's hospital bed, her fingers lightly running through his damp curls. The steady beeping of the Ford drip beside them was oddly comforting now. Just hours ago, it had been the sound of panic, of uncertainty, of not knowing if she would be able to save him. Now, it was the sound of hope. The worst had passed. Leo stirred slightly, his tiny fingers curling against the blanket. His fever had broken, and though he was still weak, his breathing was steady. He was stable, safe. For the first time in months, Camila wasn't drowning. She exhaled deeply, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead. The door creaked open, and a nurse stepped inside with a warm smile. We're finishing up Leo's paperwork, she said. He's responding well to treatment, and if everything continues like this, he should be ready for discharge tomorrow morning. Camila's chest flooded with relief. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. The nurse hesitated for a moment before adding, the payment you made, it was more than enough. Would you like us to return the extra amount? Camila blinked. The extra amount? She had barely counted in the moment, overwhelmed by the sheer generosity of it all. But now she realized there had been more than she needed. She could breathe. For once, she didn't have to choose between rent and medicine, between food and hospital bills, between surviving and breaking. She could finally just be. Yes, please, she murmured, feeling the burn of fresh tears. That would be good. The next morning, after the final checkups and signatures, Camila carried Leo out of the hospital, holding him close. The morning sun was warm against her skin, chasing away the cold, sleepless night. She strapped Leo into the back seat of Anna's car. Her best friend had insisted on picking them up from the hospital. You look like a ghost, Anna teased, nudging her arm as she pulled onto the main road. Camila laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long time. Feels like it too. They drove in comfortable silence for a while before Anna spoke again, more gently this time. You got lucky, Camila. Camila turned to look at her friend's face. Yeah, she admitted. I did. Anna shook her head with a knowing smile. No, you deserve this. You've been fighting so hard. Maybe the universe finally decided to give you a break. Camila swallowed against the lump in her throat. Maybe. Or maybe some people were just good. Maybe kindness, real kindness, still existed. And it had come from a stranger she hadn't even recognized. That night, after putting Leo to bed, Camila sat at the small kitchen table with the envelope still in her hands. She traced her fingers over the edges, still unable to believe it was real. A part of her wanted to let it go, to just move forward quietly. But another part of her knew people deserve to know. She picked up her phone, opened her social media app, and started typing. I don't know if he'll ever see this, but I have to say it anyway. Last night my son was sick. Really sick. And I didn't have enough money to get him the treatment he needed. I was working my shift at the restaurant, trying to hold it together, when a man I didn't even recognize left me an envelope. Inside was $10,000. That man was Cristiano Ronaldo. I didn't ask for help. I didn't expect it. But he gave it anyway. Without fanfare. Without expecting anything in return. Because of him, my son is home. Because of him, I didn't have to make the impossible choice between my job and my child's life. So if you ever see this, Ronaldo, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, you changed everything. She hesitated before hitting post. Would he see it? Probably not. But maybe that didn't matter. Maybe just saying thank you was enough. She pressed send and went to bed. By morning, her phone had exploded. Hundreds of notifications, thousands, comments, messages, articles. Her story had gone viral. News outlets were picking it up. People were sharing it worldwide. Strangers were sending her messages, mothers who had been in the same position, workers who understood her struggle, fans praising Ronaldo for his quiet generosity. And then, a notification stopped her cold. Comment. From him. You didn't need luck, Camila. You just needed a little help. Wishing you and Leo all the best. Her heart stopped. He saw it. He knew. Tears welled at her eyes as she stared at the screen, shaking her head in disbelief. Leo toddled into the room, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Mommy. Camila turned, scooping him up into her arms, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. Yes, baby. Leo yawned. What's wrong? Camila smiled, hugging him close. Nothing, sweetheart. She closed her eyes, breathing in her son's warmth. Nothing at all. Over the next few days, Camila's world changed. She had never experienced anything like this. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from strangers, news agencies, and even local reporters wanting to interview her. People she had never met before were offering support, donations, and words of encouragement. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about something bigger. It was about kindness. About what one simple act could do for someone drowning. She didn't know how to process it all. The restaurant had called, asking when she was coming back to work. She hadn't answered yet. For the first time in years, she had the luxury of choice. The freedom to take a breath without worrying about what bills she had to pay next. She still had to be careful. She wasn't rich, but she wasn't desperate anymore. That alone was life-changing. One evening, a knock came at her door. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, confused. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, Anna stood there, holding up her phone with a giant grin. Guess who's in town? Camila raised an eyebrow. What? Anna turned the screen toward her. There on social media was a picture of Ronaldo at the airport, arriving for a match in their city. Camila's heart skipped a beat. He's here. Anna smirked. And guess what? The news is saying he saw your post. What if? No, Camila laughed, shaking her head. No way. He's a superstar. He has bigger things to worry about than me. Anna shrugged, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. You never know. Camila didn't think much of it. She had enough on her plate, doctor's follow-ups for Leo, figuring out what came next. But that weekend, something happened that she never saw coming. Leo was napping when Camila's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost ignored it. But something told her to pick up. Hello. A deep, familiar voice came through the speaker. Camila. She froze, because she knew that voice. Her breath caught in her throat. Yes, this is Cristiano. She couldn't speak. For a solid 5 seconds, her brain refused to process reality. I wanted to check in, he continued. I saw your post. I'm really happy Leo is doing better. Camila sank into a chair, pressing a hand to her mouth. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Her voice cracked. She cleared her throat. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. His tone was warm, easy. I just wanted to make sure you and Leo were okay. Tears welled in her eyes. She thought she had cried enough in the past few days. Apparently not. We are, she whispered. Because of you. A chuckle. No, because of you. I just gave you a little push. Camila laughed softly, blinking back tears. She wanted to say more, to thank him again. But she knew he hadn't done this for attention. He had done it because he cared. And somehow that made it even more meaningful. Camila sat in silence, gripping the phone as if she were afraid the moment would slip through her fingers. She had never expected him to see her post, let alone reach out to her personally. Cristiano, she started, then stopped. What could she possibly say that would express the depth of her gratitude? I just wanted to make sure you and Leo are doing okay, he repeated, his voice warm and sincere. That's all that matters. Camila swallowed the lump in her throat. We are. He's doing so much better now. Because of you. There was a pause on the other end, then a soft chuckle. Nah, because of you. You're the one who fought for him. I just gave you a little boost. Tears welled in her eyes. How was it that one moment, one decision from a stranger, had shifted her entire life? I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't have to, he said simply. Just promise me one thing. Of course. Take care of yourself too, not just Leo. Camila let out a small, shaky laugh. I'll try. Good. He hesitated for a second, then added, I'll be in town for a few more days. If you and Leo feel up to it, I'd love to say hi in person. Her breath caught. He was serious. Cristiano Ronaldo wanted to meet her. She exhaled sharply, trying to process. I'd love that. Leo would love that. Perfect. My assistant will reach out with the details. Before she could even fully comprehend what was happening, the call ended. She sat there stunned, staring at the phone as if it had just performed magic. A few days later, she found herself standing outside a small, private cafe, holding Leo's tiny hand in hers. He was bundled up in his favorite hoodie, still a little weak from his illness, but excited. Are we really gonna meet the soccer guy, Mommy? Camila smiled. Yeah, baby, we are. The moment they stepped inside, she spotted him. Cristiano was already there, sitting in a quiet corner, dressed casually, smiling as they approached. When he saw Leo, his expression softened instantly. Hey, little man. Leo clung to Camila's leg at first, shy but curious. Cristiano leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. You feeling better? Leo nodded slowly. Mommy says you helped us. Cristiano smiled. Your mommy is the real hero. She did all the hard work. Leo glanced up at Camila, then back at Cristiano. Then, in the bold and innocent way only children could manage, he held out his small arms. Cristiano chuckled and opened his arms, letting Leo toddle toward him for a hug. Camila felt her heart swell at the sight, her son safe and happy, being embraced by the man who had given them a miracle. They sat and talked for a while. About life. About soccer. About how one simple act of kindness had changed everything. Before they left, Cristiano looked at Camila with a knowing smile. You don't have to struggle alone, you know. People want to help. You just have to let them. She nodded, truly understanding the words for the first time. As they walked out of the cafe, Leo beaming beside her, she realized something. For the first time in a long, long time, she wasn't afraid of the future. Because sometimes the kindness of a stranger was all it took to change everything.